Coronation Street teased that Kit's fate now rested entirely in the hands of surgeons, as the aftermath of Mick's brutal assault sent shockwaves through Weatherfield. The air was thick with dread as Kit was wheeled into emergency surgery, blood soaking through his shirt where Mick had stabbed him repeatedly in the abdomen. Time slowed for Sarah as she stood frozen outside the theater doors, her hands trembling, her knuckles white as she clutched at her phone, desperately waiting for any word of hope. The silence was unbearable. Hours earlier, the confrontation between Mick and Kit had escalated to unthinkable violence. Mick, unpredictable and filled with fury, had cornered Kit in a darkened alleyway near the precinct. Kit had barely managed to throw a punch before Mick, with terrifying precision, launched a series of kicks that sent him crashing to the ground. Then came the knife, quick, cold, and cruel. Mick had stabbed Kit in a frenzy before disappearing, leaving him gasping, blooded, and broken. Kit was discovered rushed to the hospital, unconscious and barely clinging to life. When Sarah got the call, she dropped everything and ran. She sat beside Kit's bed, her eyes never leaving his pale face, whispering to him to hold on, to come back. She refused to cry. She needed to be strong, for him, for herself. Then, hours later, when Kit stirred, just slightly, Sarah felt her heart soar. He was alive. He was fighting. The news of Kit waking spread fast. Bernie and Gemma, who had been keeping vigil earlier, returned home briefly to search for Brody, hoping he might come to see Kit. Bernie, ever the mother lion, was obsessed with fixing what had been broken between the two men. She believed Brody's presence might help Kit heal. But in her frantic mission, Bernie missed a crucial phone call from Sarah. Back in the hospital, Kit's condition deteriorated again. He began coughing violently, specks of blood staining his lips. Sarah panicked as monitors began to beep frantically. His breathing was shallow, his face drained of color. She screamed for help as nurses rushed in. For a moment, she thought he was gone. Her heart nearly stopped with his. When Bernie and Gemma finally returned to the hospital, the tension between them was palpable. Gemma was furious that Bernie hadn't answered her phone, accusing her of prioritizing Brody over Kit's life. Bernie, devastated, vowed not to leave Kit again, pushing Sarah to take a break while she stayed by Kit's bedside. But Kit, weak and barely able to speak, made it clear he didn't want her there. Bernie didn't understand. She only wanted to help, to be a comfort. But her constant talk about Brody, about reconciliation, about guilt, it overwhelmed Kit. Each word from Bernie's lips brought images of Mick, of pain, of betrayal. He turned his face away, tears forming at the corners of his eyes, not from physical pain, but from the emotional toll of everything he'd endured. When Bernie left, guilt-ridden and wounded, she made one last desperate attempt. She brought Brody to the hospital. She believed seeing Brody might bring some peace, might close a wound. But Kit's reaction was swift and sharp. He could barely sit up, yet his words cut deeper than any knife. "I don't want him here. Get him out." Brody, stunned and visibly hurt, turned and left without a word, his shoulders slumped, eyes glistening. Outside the ward, he muttered to Bernie, "I'm done. I've had enough of him." And he walked away. Bernie stood there, caught between the two people she loved most, and utterly powerless to bridge the growing chasm between them. Her shoulders sagged as she returned to Kit's side, now as unwelcome as a stranger. The weight of it all pressed down on her. The missed call, the broken bonds, the hope that now seemed so far out of reach. Kit, half asleep and groggy, turned his head slightly away from her. There was no room for peace in his world yet. Only pain. In the days that followed Kit's message to Brody, a strange quiet settled over everything. It wasn't peace, far from it, but it was the stillness that came after a storm, when the damage had been surveyed, and rebuilding could begin, even if no one was quite sure how. Brody never replied. Not immediately. Kit didn't expect him to. Just sending the message had taken more from him than he wanted to admit. But Sarah noticed subtle shifts. Kit was more present, more willing. He allowed the nurses to help him into a chair by the window. He let Sarah read to him again, without turning away. His eyes met hers now, and that alone felt monumental. Gemma visited daily, her presence a balm, filled with warmth and patience. She didn't press, didn't ask, didn't judge. Instead, she brought laughter in soft doses, a story about Joseph at school, a mishap with Chesney burning toast, a silly video from the twins. Slowly, the air in Kit's room began to shift from suffocating to breathable. But Bernie still hadn't been allowed back in. The letter had been a step forward, but Kit hadn't asked to see her. She waited, holding herself together with hope, with guilt, with every ounce of maternal stubbornness she had. Every day she walked past Kit's empty room, hoping to hear a footstep, a door creak, any sign that he might come home. He didn't. Then, one morning, Kit asked Sarah, without looking up from his tray, "Did Mum come today?" Sarah blinked, surprised. "No, not yet. Would you like her to?" He didn't answer, but the question hung in the air long enough. Sarah made the call. Bernie arrived an hour later, nervously smoothing her coat, clutching the edge of her handbag like a lifeline. When she entered the room, Kit was sitting up, looking outside. He didn't turn to her. She didn't speak right away. Finally, he said, "You still talk about Brody?" Bernie sighed, stepping closer. "He's my son too. But I can't fix him if I lose you." "Then stop trying to fix anything. Just sit." And she did. Their conversation was tentative, pieced together slowly, like a puzzle of jagged edges. They didn't mention Mick. They didn't mention the stabbing. Instead, they talked about Kit's childhood, about Bernie's terrible cooking experiments, about the time she dyed the dog purple by accident. Kit didn't smile much, but he didn't ask her to leave either. Later that evening, as Bernie prepared to go, Kit finally turned toward her. "I'm not ready. For Brody. Or anything." Bernie nodded. "That's okay. I'll wait." But Brody wasn't waiting. After receiving Kit's message, he had taken off for a few days, crashing on a mate's couch, walking the city at night, trying to silence the noise in his head. He felt rejected, guilty, and deeply unsure of his place in the family. When Gemma tracked him down with the help of Paul, she found him sitting in a closed park near the swings, staring at the ground. "You got his message," she said, not asking. Brody nodded. "Still angry. But okay. I don't even know what that means." "It means he's not shutting the door. And that's something." Brody looked up at her, eyes tired. "I don't know if I can face him again." "Then don't do it for you. Do it for him. He doesn't need another fight. He needs to know you're still there, even if it's messy." Brody didn't answer. But 2 days later, he walked into Kit's hospital room with a coffee in hand and said nothing. Kit looked at him, then the coffee, then back at him. "Still don't take sugar," Kit muttered. "Yeah," Brody said. "I know." They didn't talk much that day. But they Saturday. Together. And that was enough. Things weren't perfect. Kit's recovery was still uphill. There were bad days. Nights of nightmares, physical pain, moments when the trauma reared its head. But the presence of his family became the rope he held onto, each of them offering something different. Sarah's quiet strength, Gemma's light, Bernie's unyielding love, and Brody's silent loyalty. One afternoon, when Kit was finally cleared to begin walking short distances unaided, the entire family gathered at the ward's end to watch. Sarah took a video. Gemma clapped like a child. Bernie sobbed openly. Brody just nodded, his arms crossed, but his eyes didn't leave Kit's face. Later, Kit pulled him aside. You can stay angry. I probably still am too. But I don't want to hate you. Not forever. Brody swallowed hard. I don't want to be Mick's shadow. I never did. Kit nodded. Then stopped standing in it. It wasn't peace, but it was the start of one. And on Coronation Street, that was more than anyone could have hoped for. And far more than anyone dared to believe.